Hey. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Welcome to the University of Limpopo. Those of us who were here ages ago called it Turf Loop, but we are here because University of Limpopo turns 60. In other words, 1959, this university, along with 3 others, were established all over the country to cater for what then would have been called non-white students. Coloreds, Indians, Africans were created, these institutions were created for them. And the University of Limpopo was created to cater for the Sotho, the Tswanas. The University of Fort Hare, which had been there beforehand, became the one for the Xhosas, as it was said back then. There was Ongoye in Zululand, which was for the Zulus. And there was the University of Durban, Westville, the University of Western Cape, and so on. And this year, 2019, we are all proud to be part of this big celebration where we are talking about the university and the future of this kind of a university in the new South Africa. The panel that I'm going to be facilitating with 3 illustrious academics and administrators of universities, the future of historically black universities. And we are going to be talking to 3 gentlemen. I'm pleased to introduce them. First of all, the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Venda, Professor Ndanduleni Nthambeleni. There he is. Welcome, Prof. Sitting right next to him is Professor Marcus Ramogale, Deputy Vice-Chancellor of MUT out in KZN. Welcome, Prof. And right next to me here, Deputy Vice-Chancellor of the University of KZN, Professor Sandile Songca, who's going to be completing the panel of 3 wonderful, wonderful scholars, administrators, managers, leaders, and academics in their own right. And we also, of course, are very proud to welcome the students of the University of Limpopo, who we can hear in the background. They are in full voice. We welcome you. Thank you, and welcome again. Wow. Wow, you can't beat the energy here. And of course, we have the choir that's going to be entertaining us as we take a break from time to time. Join us, hashtag UL turns 60. And you can, of course, tag the University of Limpopo. My name, by the way, is Victor Kgomoeswana. I graduated here in 1990. And since then, I haven't been back to this hall since 1991. So it's a nostalgic return for me as I talk to these wonderful gentlemen. Professor Ramogale, I'll start with you because at least you and I were here more or less at the same time. You were teaching English at the time. You have come a long way, going all the way to UKZN. When you look at the future of a university like this one, your alma mater, and the one you are running at the moment, what is your opening remarks as you see it?
Thank you very much, Mr. Kgomoeswana. The future of the historically disadvantaged institutions in the country is a bright one as far as my assessment goes. However, there are challenges to be overcome. And uppermost, in as far as the HDIs are concerned, has to do with governance. Right. I think governance has become a huge challenge. As you know, the Ministry of Higher Education has had to intervene in several of the HDIs because of governance challenges. The minute you have tension between the board of the university, that is the council, and management, then things can go terribly wrong. So that is the first challenge that I see for the HDIs. But there are processes in the country to mitigate this risk. And I think we're becoming wiser as we put in place measures to deal with this particular risk.
Thank you very much. Prof. Songca, let me ask you, you have been to several universities yourself in different capacities. Prof. Ramogale is talking about the challenges that involve governance, among other things. The fees must fall environment did not help things either. What are your challenges? What's your prognosis as you see it, and what are the challenges to be overcome?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Program Director. I do concur with Prof. Ramogale in this respect that governance is a challenge in HDIs. However, I am a bit curious because the rate of governance failure in HDIs is much higher than the other universities, which are essentially more westernized than HDIs. I wonder, therefore, that whether the intrinsic problem of governance failure has to do with governance models applied across the sector than it is about the governors themselves. But I don't want to dwell too much on that.
No, maybe we should dwell on it because you are drawing a distinction. So I'm curious to find out what the major differences would be in the models, as you say.
Well, the model of governance across the universities is the same. The differences amongst universities is that, as you know, historically disadvantaged universities are by far the most Africanized universities in terms of their studentships and their staff.
Right.
And the other universities are not the same in that respect. So you ask yourself then, could it be that the strain on governance in the HDIs has to do with the universal model applied in which Africans struggle to westernize? Or could it be that the model for governance needs to come to the HDIs rather than the HDIs go to the Western model?
What kind of adjustments would be necessary to Africanize them?
If you recall, among the HDIs, there are older ones and there are newer ones. The older HDIs were not so problematic. The governance was not so problematic in those days because the latitude for governance and the autonomy was much more then. But there's been a restriction of governance autonomy these days. I would therefore say, in my view, there's a need for more liberal university statutes so that universities have a much broader scope to define the governance models within the framework of the Higher Education Act.
All right, Prof. Nthambeleni, you are well located at the University of Venda for this intra-Africa trade and collaboration because you are just close to the border with Zimbabwe on the axis. That would make you a Pan-African university just by location alone. When you hear remarks like Professor Songca's about adapting the models of governance to suit African conditions, what's your take?
Thank you, Program Director. My take is that we're going to ensure that our universities are truly African in how they are being run. And he mentioned the point around, the westernized system that seems to be apparent in most of the university already in the country. I think the challenge for us to ensure that, there are some very strong good values within an African traditional African culture that in a way should permeate themselves in our universities, in terms of management. Now, the part of the thing that I need to raise, Chairperson, Program Director, is relating to the issue of governance, which has been raised also here. That the challenge much more for our universities as a result of this historical past, where less effort, much more from government, was paid into these institutions, wherein the issues of accountabilities were much more not taken into the fore, where you require universities to be run in a way they should be run. So that period of neglect, in my view, has contributed to the state where we are today.
But when you look at, you had Prof. Mushenkondo talking about how African universities cannot be excused for still teaching only in English. Professor Ramogale, would you want to take on that point, but also address this, whether some of the Africanization would include catering for instruction and research in African languages, considering that Stellenbosch University, I'm sure, was almost pushed, I don't know if it was Stellenbosch, to not be exclusively Afrikaans, which is what I thought would have been the way to go rather than the way to move away.
The issue of let me start with the issue of the model. Universities have boards, and they are called university councils. Now, the reason why they were never called boards like you find in the private sector was for a very good reason. The people who are supposed to be members of council are not like directors of a board in a private company. They are there as councillors. That was the original idea. They come with their expertise to advise and help management.
Was that by design, though, just by happenstance?
No, that was actually the original idea. That's why they were called university councils. But with the corporatization of higher education, we now have a situation where members of council think they are almost like directors of a company and tend to dictate to management instead of playing that advisory role. Because that was the original conception of the idea of a university council. So I think corporatization of higher education is one of the causes of this friction that you often find. Because a university is not a business to start with. It's a public entity which is there to serve the public interest.
Except when funding, or if funding is tight, the corporatization and commercialization might be the way out, and perhaps you don't have a choice, these universities.
Which is another challenge that HDIs are facing, because in real terms, the subsidy that we get from the state has been diminishing. And so all universities are actually forced to, in a sense, to operate like businesses. And that's where then the corporate culture then comes in. And that corporate culture then negates the original idea of a university council consisting of advisors. So that is the one problem. But the other problem that we don't often talk about is that of late we have individuals who join university councils not with the purpose of serving, but they have business interests. They join university councils in order to manipulate the business processes within the university, in particular the tenders. I mean, that's an open secret. And that creates problems, because if you've got people with that kind of intention, their relationship to the Vice-Chancellor is in terms of whether they see the Vice-Chancellor and management as enablers of access to tenders or as people who block their access to tenders. And that has created all sorts of problems.
Has that been your experience, Prof. Songca?
This is ubiquitous, program director in the sector. Furthermore, really, in the higher education sector in South Africa now, there is a wide range of forces that are vying for the heart and soul of the campuses and the institutions for purposes of parasiting on them and cannibalizing them. This is a serious and a very critical problem that we're facing in South Africa now. And as my colleague has said, it is an open secret. So you have very diverse forces and very powerful forces from within and without, seeking access to capture and parasite on the institutions, and in particular, the HDIs are seen as soft targets in this respect.
So redefining the mandate is going to be a luxury then, Professor Nthambeleni.
Yes.
The redefining the mandate, because I went to these universities when they were supposed to be political tools to keep black people out of the game. Now, here we are, and you're saying the time to reimagine their mandate is being hampered by commercial interests?
I think for me...
Are we doomed, that doomed?
No, I think for me, we are not doomed. I think we've got a future ahead of us. But it depends on how we're going to narrate that future and able to follow it in. The issues that have been raised are quite true. They're happening. And we cannot beat around the bush around them. If you look in terms of the number of institutions that went on administration, basically most of the HDIs, they're the ones that are going through that direction. But for me, the challenge is in terms of how do we make sure that we reimagine these institutions in a way that they begin to function as they need to function. Now, one of the things that we are doing in this sector to ensure that, the statute that governs our universities, I think for me, that's an area also we're going to need to ensure that we look into. If we need to get rid of this malice that is happening around the space. Now, in our environment, University of Venda, as you know, we are a university that is under construction. There's a lot of construction going on. Now, you are also prone to these kind of challenges because of the issues that now comes with that, So for me, the remedies in terms of how do we make sure that together with the Department of Higher Education, we make sure that our statutes are changed in a way that sort of brings some accountabilities much more in the main. And that's how, for me, we're going to have to make some changes on that team.
The attempt to merge some of these institutions, maybe 10, 15 years ago, in your opinion, was it a wise move? I'm talking about merging Medunsa with the University of Limpopo. And yeah, from your vantage point of being inside the institutions.
Program Director, I think for me, the measure, you have to sort of merge because you want to make somebody strong or something strong, not to weaken. But the case in point here, if we have to be honest, if you merge this campus or this university with another university in Pretoria, about 290 km away, how do you make sure that, administration and, guidance to that university will happen in a way that should happen?
So you think the mentality was we make the University of Limpopo a University of Pretoria in Maengui, which runs contrary to the very essence of Africanization then, wouldn't it? Prof. Songca?
I wonder if the logistics question aside, which my colleague has alluded to, the very corporate business sense of it is there at all. So hence I'm saying that in my honest view, and from the corporate business sense view, in addition to the logistics view, the measures were not such a good idea.
They were not such a good idea. Now we have at least dealt with it and we are out of the woods. When I was growing as a kid in Limpopo here, going to Ethereal was the ticket to success, including commercial or material success, not maybe. What is the university supposed to be a ticket to today with such high unemployment and lots of other political, socio-economic complications?
If I can respond to this one. For me, the other challenge that the HDIs are facing is what I call the reenactment of struggle politics. In other words, you have this generation of students whose role model is the politicians of the past, the student activists of the past. So they come to these universities with that in mind, that I want to be like Onkgopotse Tiro, I want to be like so and so. They forget that we are in a different era. The era, if there is any struggle today, the struggle is not supposed to be the struggle against government or against these institutions. It is a struggle to build our democracy and our economy.
Would that be why the fees must fall was almost led by not the traditional political student formations or SRCs? I didn't see that as their main agenda. It almost came out of left field and caught us all by surprise. Is that the reason that the main leadership, student leadership, is focusing on becoming the next Nelson Mandela or Robert Mugabe or whoever went through these colleges and universities?
Well, there is some truth in that. And we really need to move away from this idea that our universities must continue to be centers of struggle. If they are going to be centers of struggle, let them be centers of struggle in terms of the economic advancement of the country. For instance, in the past, and you're right, we went to university because the message from parents was go to school, get a good education, and get a good job. But we know in the world today, there are no jobs. So we should actually be saying to our students, you come to university, not with the intention of getting a good job, you get skills to be on your own. And this is how the universities should actually begin to reposition themselves, to see themselves almost like entrepreneurial universities, that we train students not because somebody is going to employ them, but because they must, from their own initiative, contribute to the economic advancement of the country.
We'll come to the job creation versus entrepreneurship versus employment. I just want to talk about the research that universities are conducting. Are they addressing real bread and butter issues? Prof. Songca? I go to graduation sometimes and I listen to the topics people are graduating at postgrad level, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, what are you going to do with that?
There is quite a large body of controversy around the kind of researches that we go into as universities, particularly when we consider the taxpayers' money. People argue, for example, that if you use the taxpayers' money to research the activities, say, of Boko Haram in Nigeria, what's that got to do with South Africa? But then there is a higher calling for research. There is a higher calling, in fact, for historically disadvantaged institutions. This is, in fact, my own very deep point of departures, that historically black universities should never be seen in South Africa as a problem. I hear people talking about the problem of historically disadvantaged. There's no such a thing. They are an opportunity. There is a higher calling. My colleague says we must redefine. And I add to that to say we must rediscover the higher calling of institutions that produced people who sparked and sustained the revolution that we're looking at today.
Well, they will say we are telling you bring the fees down so we can access it, and you are standing against us.
Well, I will say bring the fees down.
It didn't look like the universities were in unison, at least. I mean, it became a political hot potato as well.
Quite a number of high-profile academics that see this. We're not oblivious of the quantum of money that is going to take and the reality that South Africa may not afford this. But you will never achieve anything until you put it as a goal and pin it down towards that we will achieve free higher education.
All right, we are talking the future of historically black universities. I'm Victor Kgomoeswana at the University of Limpopo. UL turns 60. That's the hashtag if you want to join the conversation or you want to participate. Dr. Ndanduleni Nthambeleni is the Vice-Chancellor of UNIVEN. The Professor Ramogale Marcus is the Deputy Vice-Chancellor at MUT. And Professor Sandile Songca is Deputy Vice-Chancellor of the University of KZN. We have students in the room here, and I would like to open the floor to them to start participating in the discussions as well. But before we do that, let's, music you can never go wrong with music. So we have the St. Agnes ZCC choir that's been doing a wonderful job entertaining us for the duration of today and even yesterday for those who were here, and for the whole week, I might add. So let's go to them and let's be back in a few minutes. Wow, wow. You can't beat that if you tried. You can't beat that if you tried. St. Agnes ZCC, I never knew they could sing like that. I had no idea. You're still with us here at the University of Limpopo. UL turns 60. 6 years ago, this university was created. I was shocked that there were less than 100 students in the first year, and people were having student numbers like 19 and 22 and 6. I had a 7-digit or 8-digit student number. We have the panel members here, the University of Venda. Vice-Chancellor is Dr. Ndanduleni Nthambeleni. Professor Ramogale is Deputy Vice-Chancellor of MUT in KZN. And Professor Sandile Songca next to me is Deputy Vice-Chancellor of the University of KZN. We have students in the hall. We have had a very great audience, but we would like to hear from you now. Remember the hashtag UL turns 60. That's where you can join us. We are talking about the future of historically black universities. Is it looking bright? What are the challenges we have to overcome? And all the other considerations. This Africanization, the decolonization agenda. Let's talk openly. Do we have a microphone? Do we have somebody who has a question? And if you do, please introduce yourself, just your name and surname so that we can... Is there a mic? Somebody has a mic? We need a roving mic. We need a roving mic. We need a roving mic to get the questions. It could be a question or a comment. And as I said, remember the 30-second rule, please. Keep it to 30 seconds if you can. So that if it's a question, we can get an answer. If it's a comment, you can also get to the point and we know what you're saying. Do we have a mic? Somebody help me, please. All right, it looks like we're coordinating. While we're trying to get the microphone, let's get to the panel here. We were still talking about this decolonization agenda in the context of the research that we are conducting. And Prof. Songca was talking about what I used to be told was basic research. We called it research for its own sake. But it's not research for its own sake. It's research for, as he said, a higher calling. There are certain things we wouldn't know if people didn't have that level of almost ethereal interest in matters that would not have been of interest to anybody. But unfortunately, we have a high unemployment rate among young people, and that not only creates a socio-economic and socio-political complication, it makes the appeal of higher education doubtful in the eyes of many young people. So we have a crisis on our hands here. Professor Ramogale, or anyone who wants to...
Yeah, Program Director...
I'm trying to say, do we have this under control, or if not, are we halfway there? Are we at least close to at least overcoming the problem?
We have to bring it under control because the management of these institutions mainly are with us as management. So we have to drive them and steer them in the right path they need to go. The point that we were talking about here, in our view, is that we have to make sure that the research that we do or that we produce has an impact in our localities. It will be wrong even for the taxpayers. If let's say the research that we conduct is not relevant to the issues that we allocated. So in that way, we might say we're not using money that we receive from government in that good way. So we want to say the research must have impact. So in other words, if there's a university here in Polokwane, the impact must be felt by the surrounding communities of this university.
So I would ask just the University of Venda, where you are situated relative to the economic, shall I say, nexus between Zimbabwe and South Africa. Has there been any research generated around that? The kind of businesses that were mushrooming on the South African side because of the crisis in Zimbabwe. Has there been anything about the tourism appeal of Venda, the traditional leaders, the Mapungubwe empires? In other words, if I come to the University of Venda, even in those humanities and fields of study that are not supposed to be commercial, are we at least moving towards what's tangible in the neighborhood? Because you can only go to a higher calling if you are relevant in the immediate.
Yeah, you're right, Program Director, and this is one of the things that we're saying, that we must use our geographic location to advantage. Now, we are well located next to the Kruger National Park, like you said earlier, and next to Zimbabwe, not very far away, Mozambique also close to us. So the research that we do and the pedagogy that we offer must be relevant to our surrounding. One of the things that we're saying, we don't want to be like University of Cape Town, because we are not in urban area. We are in a basin rural area. So we must be able to make sure that all those important things that are located within our means, we're able to use them for advantage.
All right, let's take a question. I suppose we are ready with a question. Introduce yourself, as I said, and get to the point. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, comrade students. Thank you very much, panel. Thank everyone who's here. The newsroom, you can call it whatsoever. I've got a question, Prof. Marcus Ramogale. Am I correct?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. I've got a serious problem here. Okay, this one is not Europe. This what we call an adoption of Batupili principle. And I'm sure this one is not, it's not a foreign language. You know that book and you know, but please come nice, come clean. Openness and transparency, we've seen that, it's fine. You can name them, there's openness and transparency, information access. You mentioned something about research. And there's information and access here. Information, how do we get to access that information? How do we get to access and the information? It's not even available here. And can you please try, man, by all means, and exercise this Batu. It's not it's not European, it's Batupili principles. Please adhere. Information access. You have been there. We want you, please tell us, how are you going to provide with this information? There are a lot of postgraduate students that they don't have funding, and yet you are there on that chair.
All right,
and we want that. No, I'm still coming.
Got you. No. We are not going to be able to give you forever here, unfortunately.
Okay,
we got your point.
Much.
You got your question. What's the next question? Let's get the next question, please.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. There's a question right here. Thank you very much. Prof. Ramogale, I'm sure you got the question. Apologies, because we are not going to be able to allow you to elaborate beyond the core question. Go ahead, please, ma'am.
Thank you for the time.
Oh,
Thank you for the
sorry.
opportunity. My question is about the infrastructure. As we are speaking about universities, why is our University of Limpopo not building enough resources for the safety of students as other varsities build resources each and every year? Thank you, sir, for the opportunity.
You're saying residences?
Yeah, residences.
Okay, thank you very much. We having another, I want to take another one so that we can get the panel members. So keep your hand up so that somebody with a mic can get to you in between, so that we move pretty quickly. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Mine will be very brief and precise. Is concerning the demerger of these institutions, the HTIs. I'm very thankful and blessed that we have got the dignitaries there in front. I'm relating to the incident that just happened in this institution, whereby that led to the birth of the Sefako Makgato Health Sciences University. And I'm checking because I'm observing that these people, they take, it's like they target the scarce skills discipline. They move them from the most rural areas and they put them in the industrialized areas. I just wanted to be clarified on that. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, I would be curious about that, because I was shocked that the University of Limpopo was the first university in post-1994 to open or to offer medical training. I didn't realize that no other university had done that since 1994. Prof. Ramogale? That's omission of gigantic proportions. How do we, when we have such a shortage of doctors? Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Maybe before I come to this particular question, let me try and answer the first one. I hope I understood the question about access to information and so on. In the age in which we live, access to information should not be a problem anymore. I don't know if you've got a smartphone, because if you do have a smartphone, that smartphone has got all the encyclopedias in the world for you. You just have to cultivate that discipline of using these new technologies profitably. Our young people, a lot of the time, when you see them with your cell phones and so on, they are not doing any serious work. It's more your social media.
They told me when we started there's no Wi-Fi. Are universities at least offering high-speed, unkept connectivity?
Well, Wi-Fi, it's something that is so essential for universities. You cannot afford not to have Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi has to be available.
But what is the reality? I'm trying to check. On your campus, for example, what is the situation currently?
Well, on our campus, we do have Wi-Fi. Obviously, the speed still needs to be improved, but students can access, Wi-Fi from various points on the campus. Maybe we're lucky in the sense that we don't have a very big campus, so we're able to give students that kind of access. So I think the thing about information, there's so much available that can be so confusing. And the skill that our young people need to develop today is the skill of selecting what is relevant and integrating what looks to be very disparate information, things that are very unrelated, because that's what you find when you go onto the net. You need to develop integration skills. And that comes with practice. So the minute you have that, the world is your oyster, because there is so much information available. Now, coming to the issue of research, I do agree with Dr. Nthambeleni. We need to focus on research that solves our local problems. The problem in this country is that for the historically disadvantaged institutions, even for universities of technology, there's a problem of mission drift. The Minister of Higher Education calls it mission drift. In other words, the smaller institutions want to mimic the big institutions. We must do the kind of research that UCT does, that VEDS does. But they are in a different locality. And they are dealing with issues that are not related to the problems of Maengui. So you cannot afford to mimic their behavior. And this is what DHED has been trying to discourage universities, that find your own areas of strength, create a name for yourself around certain niches, and you can become an expert in those areas, especially if those areas have relevance for your locality.
Another question was about infrastructure, but before you do that, I want to create the impression that there's not quality research happening at universities, especially the historically black universities. But there's also another level of conversion of that IP. Is an average university in South Africa, let alone historically black, Prof. Songca, geared to do that?
Oh, there's quite a, thank you, Program Director.
So that the PhD studies don't stay on the shelves and only lives in academic journals.
Yes, no, there's quite a bit of activity in that area in terms of high impact research typically done by doctoral students and their postdocs, then becoming turned into patents and commercializable products. It is happening. It is, unfortunately, much more pronounced in the much more endowed universities. and there's a number of leaders in that space, including my own university, UKZN, and other bigger universities in the country. This is not, however, to say that there are no commercializable IP emerging from a historically disadvantaged university. In fact, the observation has been that the development of commercializable IP is more researcher intensive than, or it's characterized by the researchers in the institutions than the institutions themselves. So HDIs are capable of attracting and retaining people who actually do generate commercializable IP. And if they fail to retain them, that is the issue. Because if they fail to attract and retain them, these people will be attracted by more powerful institutions.
Are universities aligned with parastatals like CSIR and other institutions that could strengthen their capacity, or am I backing up the wrong tree?
No, you are quite right. CSIR works with the universities and other parastatal and institutions and councils, and I think Prof. Nthambeleni will answer that question more broadly, but there's a big space for CSIR collaborating and working with universities, even HDIs as well. Very high level of activity with HDIs.
Prof,
Yes.
let's hear it from vendor. What is your experience? What has your experience been turning IP or research into something commercial?
Yes, there is a huge support that is coming from government, DHET and DST, around commercialization, patenting of the research that is conducted in universities. The case in point, you might be aware of TIA, which is supporting these kind of entities, in all universities I'm aware of, And also there is NIPMO that also assists in patenting, because program director is a space where you require a specific skills and money, and there are lawyers that only come to that particular part. So it's not something that just as a researcher in the lab you'll do and then you file your patent. It's quite a very pronounced space that really require a lot of knowledge in that space. Now I want to comment on the issue that was raised around infrastructure.
Okay, before that, let me ask you about indigenous knowledge though. Because it's one thing to say I want to do research and get technology innovation agency to help, or the innovation hub, but what about indigenous knowledge? I grew up in this part of the world with cuisine that only belongs here. And when Amarula cream came, I thought, no way. This is coming from a company based in Cape Town. Amarula is a Limpopo plant. What is that? What does that tell us? Moroho, for example, that cuisine. If you have schools that are able to take that, hotel schools and all that, build that into our, is that? And lastly, why is it that, and I'm really now taking pot shots at you here. Why is it that after so many years, circumcision and initiation can still be associated with deaths when there are so many universities around these communities that should, in my opinion, be able to, among other things, churn research that can make this very important institution, by the way, to evolve and keep pace with the requirements of today?
Relating to the issues of IKS in the country, it starts from government. Not very long, we had a sort of a law that says, we recognize IKS. Whilst in the past, it was just in a vacuum. There was no law that sort of governed that. So now there's a law that sort of says this is how this entity has to be attended to. Now, the point, I think, which is sort of a worry for me, and maybe my colleague also here, is that most of this knowledge that we're talking about comes from these kind of areas like here, Venda, Zululand, and elsewhere. But that particular research, when it's done in the likes of University of Pretoria or Cape Town, and not where people are. And for me, that's the shortcoming, where I'm saying, I don't think as universities we're able to optimize our space and the issues that are closer to us. The point where we say now we want to mimic other universities, and then you leave things that are an advantage for you, closer to you. For me, that's where we're going to need to make sure that we attend in that direction.
All right, address the infrastructure one then, because you were about to get to that.
Yes, I needed to say, in terms of infrastructure, I think the question is quite correct. The observation is quite correct. If you see in terms of the numbers of students that we have to admit, vis-a-vis the infrastructure that we do have, it doesn't match. So there is huge challenge in terms of us able to put much more infrastructure, that be residencies, lecture rooms and all this and that. The challenge is, most of historical black universities, we strongly rely much more on government funding. And government funding can only take you not anywhere, just there. And if you go to the likes of the historically white universities, in this case, they are not depending on the government funding for them to build residencies. There's a lot of advancement that they're able to get some money for them to be able to put infrastructure. So the challenge much more for historical black universities is to ensure that, we work on the governance mechanism we talked about earlier. How do we make sure that we are able to leverage funding and able to go elsewhere and able to bring money to build institutions, because you cannot run the university only relying on the subsidy from government.
Except when I go to Auckland Park, wherever the historically white universities are, I find that it's the private investors sometimes who put money into developing student residences, not necessarily the universities.
Yes, that's the model I'm saying we're going to need to ensure that we tap into. You know, if you look at the now Stellenbosch University, we've got a town which we now call Stellenbosch, but that town came as a result of the university. And half of the buildings that you see around that, you know, they are owned by the university, by the university. So for me, that's where you're going to need to partner now with the private, you know, partnership to ensure that, you know, you build, you know, building infrastructure, because university cannot sustain itself only from government funding. It's going to need to partner with other like-minded in that space for it to survive.
Is there, okay, go ahead, Prof. Ramogale.
Yeah, if I can maybe just link up. First, on the issue of infrastructure, there's room for improvement. There's so much that we need. But here is a sobering fact, which many of our students don't know. Universities in this country have the best infrastructure in the whole continent. They've got the best infra. If you go to African countries, you see the kind of infrastructure that they have and the amount of work they do with the little that they have. It really tells you a big story. So the challenge perhaps...
You are saying we are whinging about...
We are. And you know why? Because in South Africa, black people, we don't compare ourselves with other Africans. We compare ourselves with London, with Washington. And we're not in that space. We should be comparing like with like.
Well, he's comparing the University of Limpopo and University of Pretoria. He's not. And I know the Soweto campus of the University of Johannesburg. The difference between what was Vista and what is today, you talk about chalk and cheese.
No, that's true. That's true. But what I'm trying to say here is that we should not have this exclusive focus on material resources as the answer. What we lack as black people in this country is what I call inner resources. We focus too much on the external resources. We forget about the inner resources that we need to cultivate. And we've got colleagues here from the Black Consciousness movement. I'm sure they will agree with me that that is one area of development that we neglected as a people. And we thought that, you know, if you build schools, you build libraries, you'll solve the problem. But because we've not developed these inner resources, what happens? The very libraries that we build, people torch them. They'll fight for a third road and then ban a library. Where does that come from? It tells you there's a lot of damage psychologically. And that's the kind of challenge that we really need to focus on. But unfortunately for politics, the struggle that is inward looking, it's not popular. You know, with politicians, you need to fight an external enemy. If you tell people that, you know, look at yourself also, you're a problem, they won't vote for you. So politicians often avoid that kind of discourse. The second thing is about, which I want to talk about, is has to do with the issue of decolonization, something that we referred to earlier. By all means, we do need to decolonize knowledge. But what is the purpose of decolonization? Do we decolonize in order to just restore our pride as Africans and it stops there? I don't think that will be sufficient. We need to decolonize in order to be globally competitive. Because remember that in future, in fact today, your competitor is not just a Zimbabwean, it's not just a Nigerian, it's everyone in the world. So we need to decolonize knowledge in order to give students access to an international platform where they can be competitive.
I want to take a break because I would like to ask whether universities or academia can be appealing enough for an average young South African for our universities, especially the historically disadvantaged, historically black universities, to attract the amount, the number of academics in the right fields to be able to make them competitive in the way you are suggesting. But as always, we talked about the hashtag is UL turns 60. We're talking to Professor Ndanduleni Nthambeleni, Vice-Chancellor of the University of Venda, Professor Marcus Ramogale, Deputy Vice-Chancellor, MUT, and Professor Sandile Songca, Deputy Vice-Chancellor of the University of KZN. We have the St. Agnes Zion Christian Church Choir that has been just wowing us since we got here. I've always known the ZCC Church. I had no idea. And I know they can sing, but I didn't know they could sing like this. So let's feed our ears one more time. We'll be back in a short while. Wow. Wow, I think you have recruited a whole new members of your congregation. That's the St. Agnes Zion Christian Church Choir talking to us here at the 60th birthday celebration at the University of Limpopo. Turning 60 is my alma mater. I'm Victor Kgomoeswana. I'm with Professor Professors Ndanduleni Nthambeleni, Vice-Chancellor of the University of Venda, Professor Marcus Ramogale, Deputy Vice-Chancellor of the MUT in KZN, and Professor Sandile Songca, Deputy Vice-Chancellor of UKZN. We are talking about the future of historically black universities. We have an audience as well, so we will be happy to hear from you, your comments, not only questions. We have professors, we have academics here, we have students, we have members of the community, we have alumni, people who have been here, who were here many years ago, students today as we speak. We have part of the university management. Let's hear from you if you have any questions, if you have any comments. Shall we move the mic down to the... Oh my goodness, we have a lot of interest here. As I suggested, mention your name if you can. It's a lot easier to relate to you when we know your name. And ask your question directly. If you have to make a comment, you're also allowed. Do that, but be as crisp as possible. Anybody ready with a mic? Go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. My name is Mahlomola Matsitela from the Azanian People's Organization. I would firstly start by quoting my vice former president, Professor Seth Cooper, during the day when he said that it is very ironical and sad that we are discussing the future of this institution and the future of these students who are here. But then the panel itself, it's an irony of what is currently happening, because I don't see any young person who should hold accountable when that future arrives here. So for me, it's an irony itself. And secondly, I want to touch on that issue of skills when Professor Ramogale said that we should try by all means to have independent skills and go for entrepreneurship. Look, this is just a myth to a black child. Black child, you are just being fooled. There's no such thing as entrepreneurship that will work for you or independent skill. The system will never allow that. You understand? This system was created to make sure that that will never happen. Name 5 entrepreneurs who came out of this institution, University of Limpopo as we speak. Exactly. And the irony is that the very same institution, did you know that the top 5 best computer science students are from this university in the whole wide world? You're not being told that. Because why? We are the black child who comes from the poor backgrounds and we should remain there. The University of Limpopo, we are producing the best alcohol and we've been receiving awards for that. There is a mini brewery that side. Why are they not commercializing it and hire the very same students who are doing practicals and everything in there? Why? Because you're supposed to remain there and be poor. So let us not be fooled. There's no such thing as independent skills and entrepreneurship. No. And again, the last thing is that our very same people who are leading us now, we don't have leadership. No. The very same people, no. We don't have leadership. The very same people who are leading us today, they are just here to fill their bags for retirement. So for now, it's not yet full. That's why they are still here. That's why they are making sure when we are trying to rise, they shut us down by all means. So mine was just a compliment in disguise. Next time when we have a sitting of this nature, can we please have a youthful somebody on the platform? Because they're 60 upwards. It's a crisis.
Point taken.
Thanks very much. My name is Moafrika Puleng Mushweu. I happen to be a student leader within this particular institution. And it's very much good, in fact, that my fellow student here has already touched on issues that I wanted to touch too. But then there's another issue that is very much important that I think as a country, not only the University of Limpopo, but as a country, we have been failing to deal with for the past 25 years into this fallacy of a democracy. The issue is to move from the framework of being called a historically disadvantaged institution. Because throughout the day, we've been, with Prof. Seth Cooper there and others, we've been trying to engage on how best we can defeat neocolonialism. But the talk in itself is controversial to what was happening during the early hours of this particular day. Because it embraces neocolonialism by not finding solutions to move away from the framework of a previously disadvantaged institution to a more advantaged institution. So my question to the panel is, how best can we then integrate into that particular space? Thank you very much.
All right, let's take 2 more questions or comments, and then we'll get back to the panel, please.
Thank you. Kenna Mudija Ramogale. Mine is more of a comment. Yesterday, in its opening and welcoming remarks, our beloved Vice-Chancellor challenged all VCs, all institutions to say, let any institution which has more judge presidents serving in our superior courts raise their hand. And I would say there's not been one, because, and when I counted, we have 4 out of 9. So judging from that past where we have the university like this one has produced such giants in our judiciary, giants, we are captains of industry, I would answer the question which is posed by the theme to say, the future of so-called previously disadvantaged universities is so bright, it's brighter than ever, because in the past, these universities produced such men and women of honor with scarce, if no limited resources, with scarce and limited resources. And it takes me again to my second point to say, it baffles me to say today to have these universities, so-called Bush universities, still receiving less funding than their other institutions like your UCT, your VETS, and what so not. But despite that, our universities, with this limited resources, still manage to produce people who go out there and contribute towards the building of the nation. And I think it's what defines this university. Despite what we get, we still use it to its maximum and get the best out of it. My second comment is regarding the content part. When addressing graduates at Fort Hare in 1949, Mangali Sosobukwe said, Fort Hare must be to the African student what Stellenbosch is to the Afrikaner student, a barometer of African thought. To this day, our university, it's what a speaker earlier said, that we are perpetuating a neo-colonial setup here in our country, because we have not broken away from what the colonizers have put forward for us. It baffles me to have, for instance, students of Spedi, masters, who's mastering Spedi in English, and later to translate that into the native language. That tells you we are forced by the system to think using the Queen's language. Even now, I'm not proud that I have to address this particular hall using this foreign language. I want to, the last part I want to touch on, this one is close to my heart because I am a Fees Must Fall activist. And it saddens me when I hear people saying our struggle was in vain. Because that is not true. Today, yes, we have a black regime, we have a black government, but whose interest is this government representing? We speak about an economy. In whose hands is the economy? Today, when we need to confront issues which affect the African child or the African in totality, there's always an elephant in the room in the form of, hey, we are afraid we'll scare off investors. These same investors who, after investing, they do not allow the money to circulate. They keep it in their pockets, they go and buy the yachi and what's so not. And they, in fact, they take these resources back to their former countries. Because we must not forget that the British and the Boers, when they came here, theirs was a colonial agenda. I think, why can't we go for a decolonial agenda? Our struggle during this FISMA's fall was to say we are fighting for free, quality, decolonized, and African-centered education. The first one we were able to champion it with regard to access, to say the black child cannot be expected to fork out an registration fee, whereas at home where he comes from, they were crying of buying bread in the morning. A black child cannot be expected to pay an application fee, or we expected to pay 25,000, 50,000 annually. Whereas we are coming from a system, we have a system of over 300 years which oppressed, subjugated, and trampled on our parents and our forefathers. I'm wrapping up. So the issue that we have in the country, that is why we are at loggerheads with the current administration. What happened was that there was transference of political power, but we never tampered with the economic patterns, more especially the land ownership patterns in the country. That is why we are grappling with issues of free education, which was promised by the first democratically elected president in 1994, to say the doors of learning must be opened. Education is the most potent weapon that we can defeat poverty and all sorts of things. It seems our politicians today have turned our issues into, I don't know, we just talk. They just pay lip service. That is why we are at loggerheads with the current administration to say, what we expected to say, we should really decolonize. Because what we find ourselves is a new colonial setup, which Kwame Nkrumah want us to say, our states from the outside, you'd see them as sovereign states. But inwards, their policies, their decisions are directed from outwards. That is why today, when we have to take decisions, we must wait for Moody's, we must wait for the IMF to pronounce if it is a good policy to undertake. But I think I will stop there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a few more comments because I'm getting more comments than questions, so that we can use the last half hour to get the panel to wrap up. It's going to be a lot easier that way. So make sure that we get two more. There's somebody who's been battling up here in front to say something. So let's bring the mic down to the front here. Let's bring the mic. I'm also worried about the gender imbalance of the speakers in this room. All right, can we get a little bit of gender equity here? Let's get some gender flavor in here.
Okay, thank you. I'm Naled. My question is, how are the black universities planning to narrow the gap of financial resources between them and European universities? And another question is, as a student, I want to know why a degree for engineering is not offered here in University of Limpopo. Thank you.
Oh, there you go. All right, somebody has to take that. I would assume when you say University of Limpopo, you're talking about the category of universities. I want to know which one offers engineering. I still don't know. Okay, settle down, people. Can we get more gender equity here for a while? All right. If you're a man, I'm going to ask you to put your hand down for a while. Yes. What, you think gender imbalance is going to sort itself out? All right. Let's have women speaking. Yeah, go right there to the back. Okay, we have to make sure that we balance these things, otherwise they are perpetuated by omission. All right, let's go. Let's take 2 or 3 points up there and then we come back down. We want everybody speaking, by the way. Let's try and get used to that reality. Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Kgomoeswana, and I just have a question for the panel. I hear that we speak a lot about this decolonization of our education, but I feel like we're talking about it in abstract means. So my question to you is, what exactly does this decolonization of our education system look like? Because we need to contextualize what it is in context so that we can be able to find the steps to achieve it. Because for now, it's seeming like just a dream when we're saying we need to move from the classical point of view and we need to move to a more Afrocentric point of view in our education system. But we're not clear on exactly what that Afrocentrism in our education system looks like. Thank you.
Straight to the point. All right, I'm going to take 2 more questions and then I have to ask the panel to respond because otherwise they will be overwhelmed. Do we have another? Men, put your hands down for now. All right, there's no woman who wants to speak. Okay, we shall move on. Men, put your hands down. All right, so there's no woman who wants to speak. Okay. Let's have the 2 last men and then we come back to the front, please. There's one at that side and there's another one on this side. Go ahead. It's only a microphone. You are only trying to ask a question or make a comment. All right. Okay. We might as well shut down the conversation then if you're going to behave like that. Go ahead.
Good evening, ladies, gentlemen, and everyone in between. Mine is short. I think I'm just going to respond the lady here. I go by the name of Makota or Evidence. I think when my sister here said something about decolonizing, I'm an educator, a professional educator. I teach children. The issue around decolonization, if you check the content that we are learning, I'm going to go specifically into the content that we teach our learners at schools. It's not practical to their daily lives. Like, I have to bring these imaginary things into the classroom that whenever they're going to step out of the classroom, they're not going to learn everything. They're not going to be, there's nothing that's going to link reality to what they learned in class. That's where the issue of decolonization is going to come into place. We want our own learners from rural areas to learn. When we learn things in class, they're going to be able to see them at home. And then when I come in class and say, here's how we fetch, say for instance, we are learning about the river. Learners in rural areas should be learning about rivers, not oceans. Oceans should be another step there after they've learned what they are close to. I thank you.
All right. Okay, have all the women spoken? Okay, thank you very much. Let's move across to this side, please, and then we'll come back to the panel. Please don't be rowdy. Don't be rowdy. I'm pointing. I'm trying to point right here. Let's not be rowdy, please. That's right. Okay, he has lost interest. Sorry. All right, let's take last 2 on this side. Go ahead.
Hlonyana Dimakatso. And to add on the issue she was trying to address as an educator, I think the system of education is just the bewitchment of our own intelligence, because we are being trained to be good job seekers instead of being the manufacturers. The education which we receive does not teach us to best define us, but then we are being trained. In fact, I believe I was black when I was in my mom's womb, but then being in this world, whenever I close, the moment I open my eyes, I'm being taught to be a white person. So I think we should first address the issue of black universities, because according to me, the concept blackness in the country was just used in relation to issues of struggles, lack of development, poverty. So when we want the future, or when we question the future of the black universities, with the moment we include the term black, I think we're destroying everything, because we are questioning as to whether, in fact, we will ever reach the issue, the status where we will say, are we fully developed? Because I don't see any development for as long as we regard ourselves as black universities. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's make sure nobody has not been heard. All right, I'll come back to this side. Is there anybody that side before we move across? Anybody else? Go ahead, please.
I'll try to be short and precise. My questions are directed to those panelists there. Academics and professors, how do we then speak of decolonizing education or either research if you are in the forefront, are in the process of perpetuating Western research, because there's a logical framework on how one should conduct research. And then when we talk about IKS, it is not documented anywhere. There's an issue of gatekeeping information or either research. When I write about an African knowledge, it's not going to be printed or either published by a certain journal outside Africa. Let's check on the issue of contribution into research by this country of South Africa and Egypt. They're the best contributors of, please, 1.25% of knowledge is produced from Africa to the global content. So how do we then decolonize research if you, when I submit my research proposal, you tell me it is very wrong when I'm talking about IKS, because it's undocumented, it's an issue of trial and error. So let us stop perpetuating colonialism and let us unlearn the colonial language. It must start first with you professors there.
All right. Okay. Last one this side, and then we come back to wrap up. Thank you very much. Thank you for that enthusiastic participation. In the era of social... Okay, let's be quiet, please. Let's listen to the other people when they speak. It's all right. You don't have to get all rowdy now. Go ahead. Come down closer to the mic, sir, so that when he finishes, you can take over. I'm talking about you at the... Yes. Come down so that you don't have to be remaining invisible there. Go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Chair, for the beautiful event that you are carrying on. Mine is very short, precise, like anything that is very short. But I'm not going to quote much. I'm looking at the panel that is patriarchal in nature, that doesn't resemble what some days we're speaking about, the issue of women and gender equality. It started through all the program. If you look at it, you try to scrutinize it, we have a challenge of women. And you are there debating decolonization, all these things. I was like, look at this beautiful old man who are speaking about the future that they are not going to be in. I'm not gonna speak much on that one. My concern is we have an issue of patriarchy and a problem of men abusing women that is been there, and which you being there as male there, you are not giving confidence to our own girlfriends and women who are here, because there's no woman who's representing them there. So mine again, I wanted to speak about the issue of access of information. I think we have, the institutions have a problem when it comes to library. Let me tell you why. A library will buy a database that is expensive, yeah? Vendor will buy a database that is the same database. We are not developing a sharing knowledge society where universities shares, don't use 3 billion for libraries. Buy one database that the whole university will use and access such information so that our researches that we do, it will be simple to access such information. But the danger part, we have government that is not advised by our research. Politicians, they don't read our research. They will not do that. If they have read our research, this government was going to be far. We produce good theses with cum laudes or inventions. Who is reading those things? Politicians don't read our things.
All right.
But simple, please, on the issue of gender, please, I don't know how you're going to address this. We had one of our own. Please, man, at least she was supposed to be part of you. Maybe it will give confidence to women so that women can have a stand, so that we can progress in mentoring.
Fair point. All right, let's, very last now. Unfortunately, we are out of time. We're going to have to wrap this up. Go ahead, the last point there. No, there was somebody next to him. Yeah, who came from the... Are you the one? Gee, you were lazy to keep standing. I would have... Okay, go ahead.
All right. I want to thank you for this opportunity granted. I think the problem with block institutions is that we want to form part of the systems that we don't know. The education system that we have now, it was designed out. Go back to high school. Look at the gap between grade 12 and first year. There is a huge gap. There's nothing to feel. When you come to institutions, and now you want to speak about developing a future. But look at the age group of our vice-chancellors. It's very huge. You are speaking about the youth, but you do not want to include the youth. And the other part I've realized, I've attended several conferences. White institutions, they have partnerships with private companies. When they do research, their research is more focused. And we also do not know the micro factors that affect the institution. And I want to further acknowledge that this institution produces best minds. I've competed with the best. Unfortunately, due to political things, we did not win anything, but we know that we are better than them. We are way far better than them.
All right. Okay, thank you very much. We are out of time. Gentlemen, the future we are talking about, we have been warned we are not going to be part of. So I am really scared right now, and I need some music. When I return, some of these truths are so hard hitting, because coming up the stairs, your knees start creaking. You realize, good Lord, I'm expiring really fast here. Professor Mwebe taught us half-life. I'm sure some of us are past our half-life. So let's have a bit of music, and then while the panel prepares to respond in making their closing remarks, we have the Saint Agnes ZCC choir that's going to serenade us one last time as we prepare this home stretch of the broadcast, the University of Limpopo turning 60. round of applause for Saint Agnes ZCC Choir. We're going to ask the panel members here to help us wrap up. There are many issues. The reason I opened the floor to questions was to remember that we have many views. We are never going to find one position that we can all agree upon, but at least there are many themes that emerged. Gender equity is one of them. Generational mix is another. And also the sharing culture among universities. The commercialization theme is coming back. What research is being conducted at universities and whether or not it's being utilized or being put to good use. And the decolonization agenda came up. Professor Sandile Songca is the Deputy Vice-Chancellor at UKZN. Professor Marcus Ramogale, Deputy Vice-Chancellor at MUT, and Dr. Ndanduleni Nthambeleni from University of Venda, he's the Vice-Chancellor. Professor Ramogale, the point of decolonization, when you were a student here, your English literature set works included Charles Dickens and a whole lot of other, if you like, Eurocentric Western content. And I remember you were out inviting people like Professor Iskia Mpatlele, who had just come back from exile, and a whole lot of other, if you like, anti-establishment scholars. At that time, you were very revolutionary, but it sounds like you're an old man now. You're actually becoming irrelevant in the methods you use, the scholastic culture you are promoting. When you listen to the young people talk about decolonization and their different interpretations, what is your take on what needs to be done to get it right? At least keep the evolution at the right trajectory.
Okay, thank you very much. I think it is important to remind our young people that we were also young at some stage, and that we were full of the energy and the enthusiasm that they have. But over time, as you grow, you begin to know that energy is not the same as experience. That enthusiasm is not the same as wisdom. These things come over time. And that is why everyone, when you go along life, your views about life, about what needs to happen, you modify your views because in the light of experience. Now, I am for generational mix, but the mistake our young people should not make is to think that they know better. They don't. They don't. When you are young, you think you know better. I was in their situation. I was also in their situation.
Hang on, Prof. Hang on, Prof. We are not going down the road. No, we're not. We're going to respect these panel members. We listen to you because you have something to say and it's important. Listen to these panel members. What they have to say is just as important. Somewhere in between, you'll find your answer. Go ahead, Prof.
Yes. So, to build any country, if you look at countries that have had to build a new future for themselves, they've always relied on the experience of their elders and the energy of youth. Because your youthful members of society have that energy to take your ideas forward. The mistake that we must never make in this country is to think that our young people know the best that is necessary for the country. It's going to take them many years. And, I meet young people, students who were in the SRC, and they say, Prof, when we were students, we were really crazy. The real world has taught us so many things. And that's what is going to happen even to these young people. The real world is going to teach them a lot of things.
But I must emphasize, you're not anti-generational mix.
No,
you're
I am
not
for all.
that.
That's why I'm saying you need a blend of experience and youthful energy. Now, when it comes to building a future, I am not in support of someone who says it can never be done. I think one of the students said, you can want to be an entrepreneur, you can want to go into the commanding heights of the economy, it's not going to happen. The minute you have that thought in your mind, you've already failed. You know, in the academia, there's what is called the psychology of success. And psychology of success starts with self-belief that I can do it. You need to have that I can attitude. And I think for our young people to know how you can actually modernize a country, I want them to read something about the history of Japan. How Japan moved from being a feudal country from the middle of the 19th century to be the first modern country in Asia. It required wisdom, political initiative, and the energy of youth. It was a political decision. So that history, I always refer to the history of Japan. You know, former President Mbeki actually once went there to say, we want to learn from how you made it. But we've not really studied closely as South Africans the history of Japan. I think it's got valuable lessons for us. Now, coming to the decolonization. For me, the simplest way to decolonize is to start with the known, but never stay with the known. There's always this temptation that will remove, let me take the example of English literature. We'll remove Charles Dickens, we'll remove Shakespeare, and then we'll stay with Eskiam Pahlele, Chuna Achebe, Aikwe Ama, and so on and so on. If you are going to decolonize and stay only with the known, you don't move to learn about the unknown. You are not going to empower yourself. Decolonization is about starting with the known and moving to the unknown. Because after all, education is about the mastery of the unknown. The only way we can begin to be competitive on an international platform as a country is to accept that staying only with the known is not going to help us. We need to move and embrace also the unknown. That's a simple formula that I always share with people regarding decolonization.
All right. Professor Songca, a young man mentioned, he almost implied in my view that the method of academia, the research methodologies that we are promoting, the approach is what makes something scientific and acceptable for scholastic consideration. Those things are hostile towards the agenda to Africanize, the agenda to decolonize. You pick that sentiment? Somewhere in there lies the truth that maybe because we are not traditionally about ownership as Africans. You know, I try to think what the indigenous word for owe somebody. You know, when they say, you owe me something, in Setswana, Sesotho, Wankolota, those are not, the root of that word is not African. And I'm saying, is it possible that Africans were always all communal? That certain concepts are so foreign to them that it's not surprising that an American came and took rooibos and tried to claim it as an American patent. Because by nature, Africans are not big on owning something that even what is theirs, they allow people from outside to steal. Listening to the young man's concern and considering where you are, that you have to compete with Harvard, Oxford, and Massachusetts Institute of Technology as an African university, compete with Ghana, compete with Kenya. Is there a chance that we could evolve our approach to scholasticism?
African academics, I again appeal to you, not allow forces that will psych you negatively and say, you cannot do it. Being here is about you being able to do it. We believe that the children that are sent by parents to these universities are students who have the potential to do excellent things. And we have proven this. That young man there said a number of students from these very universities have done fantastic things. And yes, coming to that research issue, we contribute very little to the research of the world, and we keep following the research niche areas and ethos of other nations. It is correct that we must turn on our assets and research them. Top among those is indigenous knowledge systems and the value potential that is locked and hidden in indigenous knowledges. These things will be our assets in the future, which belong to us uniquely, and we can trade with the world with these things because they will not be able to produce them. Only we will be able to produce them. I happen to be in the area of research in geophagia, which is a phenomenon of women eating soils, and there's a long story. But there's a whole value chain there, starting from areas where miners mine the soils, others prepare the soils, and then others ship the soils to markets. Believe me, markets in Africa and in Europe and America. That's a value chain belonging to Africa. They cannot, nobody else can do it. I didn't know a few years back that there was such a value chain. Value chain of cosmetics emanating from soils. Now imagine if L'Oreals of this world got hold of our cosmetic potentials. So we must focus on the potentials of our indigenous assets and research them in a different way. Indigenous knowledge systems researched in the Western way will fail to give value to Africans.
Thank you very much. Dr. Nthambeleni, the knowledge sharing, when he talks about this, and he mentioned the word there, the field he's involved in, that knowledge sharing that somebody here, and I know he came down from the top or he was vice, the knowledge sharing that we are aware of what's happening, not only to be able to advance our indigenous knowledge system, but to also promote this ethos that things are possible. Because by being aware of what's happening, done by your peers, you create a community of believers, people who believe in what's possible. How are we doing there? And again, I keep coming back to you because you are in a frontier kind of environment. I'm very intrigued by what's happening in Zimbabwe, as I am by the entire African continent. And anybody who's near another country, to me, is in a vantage position.
Yeah, I think the students are quite right in terms of the question they're asking. But we have to believe in ourselves. We cannot believe we cannot do it. Because once you believe you can't do it, you've already failed. So I want to say, let's believe in ourselves as people, that we can change whatever that is before us. Now, with regard to the question about, open sharing here and there, research is only strong when you collaborate. There's no way we can be strong if we don't work with others. I have to know your work. You have to know my work. We have to collaborate. It's just a pity in the country we don't collaborate with Africa because of our historical past. We found that we are much more tuned to the West. And yet I can tell you there's much that is happening in the research in the African continent that we must always find leverage to. And that's the point that is going to make us strong. I think if you look in terms of what the government has done so far, which I think most of the audience here might know, that there's what they call an open access, wherein if you're funded by government, when you go and publish your work, the work has to be in a space where everybody can access it. Whilst in the past, you have to subscribe to these journals for you to be able to read the research. Now we're moving to an era where now there's going to be this open access, wherein the work that is done here can be accessed anywhere in the world, which increases the citation index in terms of what is happening here, which for me is good. We must appreciate that, But coming to the point of ensuring that, in the region here, as we are, I think for me it's an irony that you find, ourselves, University of Venda, which is about 110 kilometers away from here. You find, we collaborate with somebody in Japan, while there's somebody here that we can speak to and work with. So that really put us to be in a disadvantaged space, because we are not really talking amongst each other in terms of what is happening on the space. I would like a scenario wherein, if let's say we have to procure any research equipment, which these are quite very expensive, that we procure these, they can be resided here with the view that investor vendor will have an access, and vice versa. And for me, that's how you're able to bring this collaboration around people to work about. And for me, that's what makes our research to be much more stronger if we do that.
All right, thank you very much, Professor Ndanduleni Nthambeleni, Vice-Chancellor at University of Venda. We also had Deputy Vice-Chancellor at MUT, Professor Marcus Ramogale, and Professor here Sandile Songca, Deputy Vice-Chancellor at UKZN. And thank you very much to you for joining us in this broadcast, and thank you to the audience for their participation, their enthusiastic participation. Yes, you may applaud. And in fact, I'm going to ask them to play us out, because we've come to the end of the broadcast. Where is the St. Agnes ZCC Church Choir? We're going to ask you to prepare something as we play out. Get going. You can get on your feet. We really appreciated the serenading you have done here throughout the day, and I might add throughout the week when we were here. That's it from us out here, University of Limpopo, turning 60. It's Victor Kgomoeswana signing off to the sound of the St. Agnes ZCC Church Choir. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Somebody lost spectacles again. Oh no. So please we are done with the broadcast now, but somebody lost spectacles. Thank you, you're a very great audience. You were very enthusiastic. And I don't know where I'm going to leave this because I won't be here tomorrow. So I might leave it with the team down here. It's spectacles yet again. Somebody losing spectacles. Probably they can't see, so they can't find them.